Just a point of clarification. The law that you're referring to, under equal protection under the law, that does also apply to us. I think that was the point that we made when we first started the occupation, was that because the law is on the books, it also applies to us. It's not exclusive to just people who are homeless. So I think it's very disingenuous to say that the law doesn't apply to us equally as it does to other people who are in our community. Another thing that I would like to bring up is to kind of try to bring it back to the reasons why we are here in the first place. We did not come here 7 weeks ago simply to camp out. We came here because we are disgruntled over the system as it is, how it enriches only a sliver of the population and does nothing for the rest of us. And the issues, the grievances that we have brought to the city have not been addressed. That's a fact. And my question is, when are you going to address those issues? That is the reason why we're here. That is what is holding up the whole process of us leaving, is that the city has refused to answer our grievances. We have a long list of grievances, and I know that the city is well aware of these. I'm sure you've read through them. The declaration from New York that we also approved at our General Assembly. Those are a list of things that we are very upset about in our movement that need to be addressed by the government at large. And there has been nothing forthcoming from the city to address those grievances. This morning, I went before the city council and said, on my own behalf, I have a proposal that I would like you to consider as a step forward, as of a solution that the city could get on with to help in that process. And I spoke with Councilman Alarcon afterwards. He came out and was talking with members of our group on the sidewalk, and he said, well, first, we're too general. We don't know what you're asking. And I said, well, were you in the council meeting? Did you hear the proposal I made? Oh, yes. Well, that's too specific. We can't answer that. And I said, well, which is it? Are we too general or are we too specific? And he says, well, I'm a politician, you have to understand. So I get to talk out of both sides of my mouth. And that's how I'm understanding it, is that the city is trying to talk around us instead of dealing directly with our issues, dealing with the questions we have. And I would actually like to know when that process of actually addressing our issues is going to begin. If it's not at this table, at which table is it going to be where we can come and talk to you directly about what the city's going to do to address our grievances. And to that, I would like to make a proposal that I would like to officially give to the city, give to the mayor, on something that I presented 6 months ago when I myself ran for state senate. And it is something that was aired in the Los Angeles Times when all this budget crisis was going on, about how to come up with $25 billion. And I put a policy forward that has been heard publicly on both solving our budget crisis and ending homelessness in one policy. And this doesn't come from me. It comes from the United Way. It comes from the National Alliance to End Homelessness. It comes from the County of Los Angeles. Yes, the County of Los Angeles for 4 years now has implemented a program called Project 50, which it takes the 50 worst case scenarios of homelessness and puts them into permanent supportive housing. And from their study, they want to expand this to Project 500. Why? Because in their study, it saved the county $20,000 per person per year to simply house people in supportive housing. That would solve the problem. Now, our budget deficit is $25 billion. We have 1.5 million people in this state who are homeless. If you multiply $20,000 by 1.5 million people, you come up with a total of $25 billion, and that's savings per year. This is something that's already being worked on the county level. It's something that the city could implement. It's something that the county has already implemented. It's something the state could implement. It's something the federal government could implement. This would be a real solution to our problems, our issues that the city can address. And this is something I'm putting forward, asking you to consider this. Not that what I have to say is perfect. It needs wide discussion, but this is a step forward. When are we going to have these type of discussions when we actually talk about changing policy in a systemic way that helps the rest of us instead of just the 1%?
I'm happy to take whatever you have, and I do think it is important to understand the purpose of my presence here and the chief's presence around this table is not to debate policy, but it's my directive from my boss was to work with the group, however you're representing yourselves, to continue. My number one mandate is, regardless of what your message is to protect your ability to exercise your First Amendment right to deliver that message. Now, that is the extent of which I'm not here to debate policy, but I am happy to take whatever you have and bring it to back to the office for you. I'm happy to do that.
I think Sarah famous.
But you got to understand, and this is what I would just ask you to think about, is that to the extent that there is agreement and there may be disagreement that the current situation at City Hall Park is not sustainable for the long term, my purpose for being here was to work with your representatives to try to figure out what makes sense and what would be sustainable. We have no interest in limiting or in any other way preventing anyone from exercising their First Amendment right. But it does have to, there are some limits with regard to the use of space. And that's the extent, that's it. So I'm not going to argue with anything any of you have to say. I wholeheartedly support everyone's right, as does the mayor, to petition the government on any issue, whether we disagree on whatever policy. So I would just ask you to just think about it in those terms, and our office is willing to work with you, with anyone, to help facilitate that in the future. What we're concerned about right now is just the conditions of the park, and that does need to be addressed, and it will need to be addressed.